Welcome back, guys. We're going to go ahead and hop right into things. So, real quick, we just talked about Trump and RFK Jr. Did you have any other thoughts before we move on now to summarize or anything like that?
Not in particular. No.
Okay, cool. I'm cool with moving on. So, real quickly, I think that it's important before we talk about the campus protests to just very quickly reiterate to people our views on the conflict going on in the Middle East right now. So, I think it's fair to say that you are America first. You identify as such, but you do view Israel remaining a entity in the Middle East as in America's interests. You think that we should support them financially, among other things, and that's a different situation than, for example, Ukraine. You don't view that in America's interest. You do view giving money to Israel in America's interest,
Right?
And with war, it's very situational for you, overall. Overall.
Mm-hmm.
So in this situation, and I'll just say, I'm a little bit more radically America first. I would, or a lot more radically America first. Some people refer to that as America only. I don't really have a problem with that. I basically view it as, that's y'all's affair. Ultimately, y'all are surrounded by the neighbors that you're surrounded by, and you need to decide for yourself, good, bad, ugly, how you're going to conduct yourself. And I'm for, this goes back to when I was a libertarian, I'm for ending all foreign aid in that same view. All foreign aid. So South Korea, South Korea, Israel, Ukraine, all of it. It didn't really matter, even UK and Japan and so on. So real quick, whenever you see these campus protests, so protests at Harvard, protests at Yale, Columbus University, Columbia University, so many different ones, Berkeley, what are your thoughts when you see both protesters and counter protesters? What's going through your head? What do you think?
All right, so protesting is fine, as we've stated before. We've stated this throughout BLM. We've stated this throughout, we've stated this throughout 2020. You can go as far back, since day one of us ever meeting. Protesting is fine. And also not impeding on other people's rights as far as, like, for example, there are some of these protests that are blocking people's ability to get to work, or in this case, blocking people's ability to get to their classes. Yeah, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. That is where you are stepping the line of your right, overstepping the line of your right to protest. 100%, you can protest all you want, peacefully, and make your voices heard. 100%.
Sure.
I don't even care if I disagree with you. Again, abortion wants to go out there and the pro-choicers want to go out there and protest. By all means, go ahead. But you can't stop people from driving to certain places. Just like you should not be able to protest on a on a highway, or whatever, stopping people from getting to work and stuff like that. No more than you should be able to stop people from getting to their classes or anything of the sort. And you can't put your hands on people, et cetera, et cetera. Also, for some of these protesters, there was one protest group that was asking for aid from people. They apparently hate America, but then they want and stuff, and they have all these demands of the food that they need. It can't be packaged. It needs to be vegan friendly, and it needs to be hot food. It's like, what? Like, no. If you're gonna protest, supply your own stuff. But no.
So let's specify here. So this was a group that was telling the school what they needed, or
they set up a page. They set up a page, and just telling people, like, hey, if you want to help us,
and here's the requirements.
Right. Okay. Here's what we want. But if you're going to send this stuff, this is the things it has to be. No packaged food. No hot. It must be hot. And it's like vegan and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, like, okay, cool. These protests are ridiculous. Again, protesting is fine for whatever side. If you feel, Palestine is, being, murdered and et cetera, the people of Palestine are being murdered, fine, protest it, I guess, If you feel that the people of Israel are being murdered unjustly and everything, fine, go right ahead and protest. Don't touch people. Don't impede on their ability to get places that they want to go because they're human just like you, and have things that they got to do. And some of these people don't even give a rip, so don't prevent them from getting places. So yeah, that's my opinion. And as far as now, I will say one area that I'm kind of frustrated.
Probably ask him on that note. Some people that don't give a rip, you probably ask him, "Are you for Israel, Palestine?" He's like, "I just want to pass my class."
Right, exactly. It's like, dude, I just want to get.
I'm trying to study. I don't care about that. The only thing I care about right now is passing chemistry.
Right.
You know,
it's like, dude, I got a final I got to get to. Right. It's like, I have no concern of either one right now. Like, yeah, no, 100%. But yeah, the one thing that I'm disappointed in is the police departments, for the most part, is you see somewhere the police where the police are just kind of sitting to the side, not doing anything. It's like, look, automatically when you start impeding on people's ability to do things, that's an arrestable offense. Again, even if it's just for a day, at least handcuffs. I'm not saying like, oh yeah, throw them in jail for years and stuff. Like, no,
detain.
You still get arrested, detained, whatever you want to say, for doing something stupid. Stupid games win stupid prizes. Unfortunately, stupid games are not winning stupid prizes right now. They're winning on their side. So it's like that's the issue I have with it. Is just, again, protests are fine, but within the boundaries,
Yep.
So yeah,
I tend to agree with that. I tend to agree that if you the question becomes, okay, when it comes to on a college campus, do you have the right to do political stuff? I may not like it, but you do. I mean, that's just how it is. Because the problem is, if you shut down political discourse of one kind, you have to basically get rid of Turning Point USA. You have to get rid of the conservative club of whatever.
It's a thin line.
Yeah, the college Republicans group here, the college Republicans. You can't really, and then the other problem is if you outlaw one side, like if you basically stop pro-Palestinian protests that don't impede traffic, that's what to clarify. If you do something against them, the left, who has a ton of institutional power, will use it against the conservatives in a heartbeat. It's not even a question. So
no question.
So that's the danger. So with that all being said, the question then becomes, all right, so if you have the right to do it on a college campus, and I agree with you, you don't have the right to slow someone down or stop them while they're trying to get to class, or if, like you say, if you're out driving, whatever. Yep. And I will say, what you said about the cops is accurate. It makes me think of 2020 because what did you have? There was whole times where people were out in the streets chanting and hitting people and burning stuff. And where were the cops? They really were either stretched so thin they were ineffective. And it's like, well, where's your backup, right? Where's your National Guard? Why is your governor not sitting in the National Guard? And that was the big question.
Right.
Or secondly, they were there, but they were told to stand down by the woke governor. So, and here's the thing. I mean, this is why in a lot of ways people are leaving blue states and going to other states is because of the lack of leadership, the lack of using authority. The police effectively. Yeah, authority, really. And what it comes down to, in my view, is these people are against hierarchy and against authority because if you have authority, if you have law, it implies a lawgiver, which would be God. And these people ultimately, at their core, are anti-God.
Oh yeah,
and or making themselves their own God. So that's the issue here. Is sorry guys if you hear a dog making noise, it's our dog. Hey, it's my dog. Come on, don't do that. So he wants the bottle is what he's going after. That's what it is. He wants to go after that. So I agree with you in terms of free speech. But don't destroy people's property and don't affect people's lives and livelihood of getting to class on time or getting to work, things like that. So then the question becomes, all right, so that said, that out of the way, we have a bill that has gone into the House and is now going into the Senate. And so that is where we are at. Now, you were just telling me in the show prep that Marjorie Taylor Greene has publicly came out and said, I will not vote for this. I dissent to this. This is going to abridge on free speech. We were also talking about how Steve Deace has raised free speech concerns regarding the anti-Semitism bill.
Right.
From what I can tell, this bill is not just for college campuses. It is also for all things. You are not allowed to, for example, say that the Jews are Christ's killers. You have to not say that because that's considered anti-Semitic.
Right.
And
it's a general bill as far as
Yeah.
it applies to everybody,
So,
not just college.
if this, so I want to make something very clear. Even if this bill was about specifically college campus protests, I would still have a problem with it because the question would be, like I just said, okay, even if you're using it to crack down on pro-Palestinian protests, the left will find a way to weasel it against the right.
Yeah.
And also it's a matter of free speech. And also, look, if the police department fails, if college security fails, that's on that college.
Right.
That should not be then the federal government's responsibility to say, you're not doing good enough. You have hate speech on your campus. It should be, if you have a problem with it and you live in that state or you live near that campus, get mad, call up the president of the college. Be like, what the heck's your problem? Why are you not making security do something? Regarding, disorder. I'm not talking about speech. So then let me just real quick hit this with you because we have to actually go into specifics of the bill in a moment. But whenever I think about the concept of free speech, stuff like that, there's also people that say, well, but that does not include death threats. Tend to agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you should be able to just stand around and threaten people.
Yeah, I mean,
So the question becomes, because I saw one side, and look, whether it was a Fed or not a Fed, I don't know. It could have been a Fed there to stir up trouble.
Yeah.
But someone had a Palestine flag, and it literally said, I'm not going to say the full term, but we're beginning with the G with the S at the end of it, and then the Jews, referencing Holocaust. We'll just put it that way. I'm not going to say the full term. But when you have a situation like that, does that fall under free speech or is that a death threat? That's a tough one for me. I don't know because it sounds like a death threat. It should be taken seriously. It sounds like you are endorsing violence against somebody. I would have a serious problem with that on any side. You should not engage in political violence, right? That being said, it's a sign on a flag. They are not actually running around beating people up with it, at least not what I saw. And then the question becomes, okay, so because here's the issue. If that's hate speech, if you want to call it that, if that is a death threat, then how am I supposed to interpret, or how are cops supposed to interpret Black Lives Matter activists chanting pigs in a blanket fry 'em like bacon?
Right.
That's a death threat too by that same logic. It's not 1-to-1, but it's very close.
Right.
So to me, if one is free speech, the other ought to be free speech, or they're both death threats.
Right.
So wanted to get your thoughts on that jump in there. What did you think regarding, the Palestinian flag and that slogan? Would you put that under free speech? Would you not? And why?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a tough one because, I mean, from personal opinion, yeah, no, that's not free speech. But as far as interpretation of the law, right, is that free speech? I don't know because yes and no, it's a death threat, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, like you said, it's not directly a death threat.
It's not threatening one person's safety or doxing them with an address or anything like that.
So then by that, can you therefore classify it as a death threat? Mm-hmm. Right? Now, counterpoint to that is if somebody talks about doing something to a school, that's threatening multiple people and is also a death threat to multiple people. So, yeah, the death threat thing shouldn't just imply to one person. If it's implied on multiple people, then yeah, I do not classify that under freedom of speech, and that goes for anybody. This is not just because of the Palestinian thing. This goes for pigs in a blanket frying like bacon, et cetera, stuff like that. Yeah, no, that doesn't go. Like, no, that's not okay. Now, the question is, how do you deal with that? Do you arrest those people? Do you just say, hey, y'all have to shut it down? I mean, what do you do from there? Because I don't think arresting those people is necessarily the best idea. But then again, it's like, where some of these ideas can go. I mean, think about like Hitler, Stalin, and just some of these guys when they were having their public speaking things, those were arguably some things that should have been shut down. And, Hitler should have been put in jail a long time before he could have gotten started, So it's tough, as to what to do with that. But yeah, no, I don't think that some of that stuff falls under the freedom of speech, just because, it's not hate speech, it's murder speech in that sense, of when you're talking about getting rid of a person or a population or a group of people, that's murder speech, not hate speech. That's murder, which can lead to other things for sure. So
it's tough because, like, for example, people would look at what Michael Knowles said it wasn't the most recent CPAC. It was probably 2 CPAC speeches ago, where he said transgenderism must be eradicated, and say, okay, well, that's not only hate speech, that's death speech. Because eradicate, sort of, I know what he means. He means doctors stop telling people they're trans.
Right, and also just the idea.
But if someone were to say, let's just say if someone said eradicate Judaism, how would that be interpreted versus eradicate transgenderism?
Right.
It's tricky. Where to me, if this is going to be handled, and I don't really think it necessarily should be, I think that, like you're saying, there's a difference between threatening an individual or even a few people versus threatening an idea or a belief system or whatever. And I think that if someone does step in, it ought to be either a state or a municipality, not the feds, because the feds, like I say, they're going to screw it up. They're really not going to do the right thing here.
And also, as far as eradicate Judaism and eradicate the Jews, I agree that it's virtually saying, to an extent, saying the same thing. But like, all right, which one would you ban, quote unquote? Mm-hmm. Eradicate the Jews or eradicate Judaism? Because you could make the argument that, well, Judaism is the idea, right? Mm-hmm. Versus,
saying the Jews as people,
right? So it's like, no, I just want the idea.
Like it's some atheist that's angry about religion who's like, I want everyone to stop being Jewish in the sense of I want them to become atheists.
Right,
like
exactly. Because there is a difference between saying, just the trans thing, eradicate trans ideology, transgenderism, whatever, eradicate that, and saying eradicate transgender people.
Right.
Because then you are targeting an idea versus targeting the people. Now, again, give somebody an inch and they can take a mouse, so you got to be careful with even allowing some of those. But again, you and I would both agree that saying eradicate transgenderism, the idea, is perfectly okay. I believe you and I would both agree with that.
Definitely.
But then saying eradicate transgender people, that's terrible.
People still have lives and human value.
Right, exactly. So, but eradicating ideas is not necessarily bad. It's how far then that goes when you sit there and say, okay, let's eradicate this idea. Then do you then say, does that progress into saying, okay, these people that believe this idea need to be eradicated?
Well, by the way, that's kind of the game that the left is going to be playing in the next dozen years or longer, depending on how long our country lasts.
Right.
It's going to become less about Trump than conservatism, MAGA. This is the game Biden plays all the time. He doesn't just say Trump supporters; he says MAGA extremists.
Right.
That'll be whoever I don't like is a MAGA extremist.
Right. Eradicating.
Doesn't matter if they're not even. Doesn't matter if they're not even that extreme. They're still, if they question me, then they're MAGA extremists.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So that's the important thing. So real quick, because we only have a little bit left of this part 2, because we have a schedule to follow. So this anti-Semitism bill, as I said, talks about how you're not allowed to, in ways people are saying, both Charlie Kirk and Steve Deace, and Charlie Kirk's got a very big following at Turning Point, has said that this is going to make parts of the Bible illegal to say. Specifically because I don't have any fear, his blood be on us and our children, and the passages about the Jews disagreeing with Jesus.
Right.
Which, as you and I were discussing in the prep, factually is so. I mean, now in my Bible, I don't know about you, it has a footnote saying, look, when it says the Jews, it's specifically referring to the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin.
Right.
But not necessarily at the time before Pilate. It says they all chanted crucify him. So it was way more than just them. Now, it does say they stirred up the crowd, but other people chose to chant.
Yeah.
They did, and they had free will. And I think we should give them the responsibility. That's fair. And so they had free will. They chose to chant. So that being said, if it's a historical fact, is it, it's kind of like when people say things like, there's some people that say things like scientific racism. It's like, well, it's got to be one or the other. You can't really have racist history. It's either one or the other.
Right.
It's either not history and it's just racist, or it's history, therefore it cannot be racist. I mean, these are the facts of what happened.
Right.
So in this sense, if it's history, biblically or not, it is history.
Yeah.
Don't call it anti-Semitic because this is a fact of what happened, right?
Right.
And to me, this is where you have a problem with free speech. And by the way, this Anti-Semitism Awareness Act passed by a big margin, 320 to 91 in the House a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It did face opposition in the House, in the Senate from Republicans and Democrats. And Schumer has kind of popped the brakes on this and said, well, we got some big questions about what is this going to mean for our country regarding free speech laws and stuff like that. Schumer, got to give him credit on that. Broken clock right twice a day kind of thing.
Right.
At least it sounds like he's asking some questions about it. He's probably in the end going to go along with it. But I think that I give him 1% credit for that.
Right. Right.
So this article continues to say Mitch McConnell said we've seen that iron bend under the heat of domestic political pressure. This is having to do with the security of Israel. He basically compared support for Israel and the Jewish people as iron. He said we're seeing that bend under the heat of domestic political pressure from his, meaning Biden's, party's anti-Israel base and the campus communists who decided to wrap themselves in the flags of Hamas and Hezbollah. And so he then went on to, so he said that. And the point, I guess, with this bill, as we've stated, is Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying she will not vote for it. Is I would support her in that.
Yeah.
She's, from what I can tell, really good politically, not good personally. She's cheated on her husband, stuff like that. It's kind of like Trump. Guy's cheated on his wife before, not a morally good thing to do. But politically, are the two of them effective, at least in certain areas, in certain ways? Yeah, and at least she seems to be looking at the long game and saying, okay, kind of like we've been saying, if we do something against speech today, it may look good and feel good. What is it going to do in the future? And credit where credit is due, Ben Shapiro, who to me is radically not America first on foreign policy, criticized this bill and said, look, there's a lot of crap in this bill that's questionable. We really need to ask questions about this because of the fact that it will come down to, it may be Hamas and Hezbollah today. It'll be Trump tomorrow. That's the point. Whether it be Trump or it may be the guy that, DeSantis in 2028, whatever it is. It may be, well, you are against giving aid to Ukraine, therefore you're pro-Russia, therefore we are cracking down on you on this campus, right? Something like that. You're just a Russian disinformationist, something like that. So, and look, anyone with a brain in their head would say, no, you should be able to say what you want to say. I mean, with free speech, it should be, anyway, it should be. Now, again, there's certain things you should not do that are unwise. Example, I'm not about to walk into work and declare and proclaim all my political beliefs. That's just, there's a time and a place. Kind of like the story about shooting a dog. There's a time and a place. You don't put that in a book when you're a big politician. Right. This is not just you sitting around saying, well, we had to put the dog down, something like that. Yeah. This is you writing a book that
just
is
leave it at that.
To be published, right? And so that's my point also, is there's a time and a place. And see, we used to live in a country where people knew that. They knew there's a time and a place, people should have a filter. And we're becoming increasingly, less aware as people, where people just, feel comfortable going on campus with a rainbow flag or a trans right flag, rather than saying, I may feel this way, but it's not really your business, so I'm not going to just proclaim it everywhere.
100%.
And unfortunately, the majority of the trans ideology are activists, and there's all kinds of issues. And then there's also, okay, how many of them are going to become teachers? How many of those teachers are going to teach young people to believe the same way? And this is where we have a massive problem. Right. And so I will say, to kind of go full circle, back to 2024, 2028, really, DeSantis is probably going to be the best on that issue because of what he's done in Florida regarding the LGBT. Right. While not hurting people and respecting them as human beings in the eyes of God, but still saying, groom children. Right. And he got, again, this is why I say there's no way to spin back the clock, because what was it called? It was called the Don't Say Gay bill, things like that. This is why I think whether he gets in office or whoever, they're going to get the Trump treatment. Unless they're just no threat to the system, then they're going to say, well, we don't like you, but you're better than Trump, something like that. Kind of like how they did with George Bush, going on Colbert and Kimmel, and Kimmel showing people doing impressions of Bush and them laughing about it and stuff like that.
Right.
They're going to do that for people that they treat with kid gloves, which is actually ironic with Bush because they used to hate Bush.
Right.
And Bush was very pro-life and not at all on board with gay marriage. I mean, his VP was. He wanted civil unions, but Bush did not.
Right.
And so they went from thinking he was horrible and evil, and I think the guy's name was John Lewis, boycotting his inauguration because he's such a foul human being, to them being like, oh, well, all's well and good, and we love you, and you can go on some left-wing shows now because we're kind of rehabilitating you, I guess. So that's there is no endpoint. That is the path. That is the future for the left. That is how they will treat Republican presidents and stuff. So
for sure.
So real quick, we've only got a few minutes left of the show. Wrap up with anything else you wanted to say about what I said or about these protests and the bill and whatever else.
As far as the protests and things go, no, I don't have anything to say towards that. The only thing that I wanted to kind of go back to, just just because I had a question for you, is, we talked about, the 2024 thing as far as, I think this is not the most important election, like everybody says it is, but again, that's everything. But, saying that, Trump, if it was then, then it has to be now. But the reason I say it's not is because would you say that 2016 to 2020 Trump is the same as 2024 Trump? No.
I think that a big change happened in 2017 or 2018 with Trump. And I think from then on, he's been the same. And that's not all a positive thing. Some of it sort of is, but some of it is not, in the sense that, I think I don't know. That's a very nuanced topic, but I'll just say I think in probably 2018, which by the way, 2018 is whenever the Republican majority ended in the House.
Right.
I think that was a transitional moment, and I think some of it had to do, unfortunately, with Paul Ryan setting back MAGA and probably giving Trump bad advice too, because Trump probably said, well, look, you've been Speaker of the House and you've been a VP candidate before. You didn't win, but you ran with Romney. I want to hear what you have to say. And I think he probably listened to a lot of bad advice from Paul Ryan. And now since then, Paul Ryan's gone against Trump and he didn't have a positive view of him. But I'm saying at the time, I think Trump probably was listening to him too much.
Right.
So I take your point that he has changed. Overall, not for the better. I would still say he's going to be the best we got in this election cycle. And you understand that.
Yeah.
So that would be my answer. I think the change happened before 2020. This guy has been less than ideal, but that's unfortunately the way that it is. That's what I would say. Did I answer that?
Yeah, no. And I mean, the only thing I'm going to add to that is personally, I think that either way in 2024, America's going to get what they deserve. Who they deserve, whatever. Well, I do believe
as long as the election is fair. Because if the election is not fair, then America's not going to get who it deserves.
I still believe, just from a Christian standpoint, I believe there's a reason that America's not mentioned in the Bible, or, some people believe that America is that mystery Babylon to an extent. And here's your judgment, I mean, look at where we're going. We're going to, essentially baby sacrifice, with the abortion.
God of convenience.
Right.
This baby is not convenient, therefore I will abort it.
Right, and the God of self.
Yes.
Self-worship, which I mean is directly satanic.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's why
your eyes will be opened. You shall be like God. That is the Garden of Eden, right?
So I think, either way, rigged or not, God's giving us what we deserve, not necessarily what we want. And I'm talking America, not you and I, right? But yeah, I think America within itself is going to get what they deserve, not necessarily what they supposedly won.
I
So,
agree.
and that's just because of, the most important elections in the past,
Yeah.
that we have let slip and let slide, and just these things that we have let go. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, he is Celtics fan 33 still,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Any underscores? I don't think so.
No. Yeah. Just
And you can find me almost everywhere. I'm the Fog Whirlwind. Gab, Instagram, Twitter. What are you on Twitter?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I know there's X
dead
now.
naming.
Yeah, right. It should be at ZooNation1776 if you want to follow us on X here. There's also Zoo_Nation_ on Instagram. And then we have a Facebook page. Just look up Zoo Nation. And that's pretty easy. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. My name is Josh.
I'm Nathan.
Appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Thank you very much and take care.